Us gamers are looking down the barrel of a game streaming hostile takeover. What with Google Stadia and Nvidia GeForce Now out of beta and in gamers' hands, our PC towers are all but junkyard trash at this point.
Well, that's what they keep telling us anyways. If that's truly to be, which of these two game streaming titans will be the one to rule them all? And how do they compare to a local machine?
To answer that, we're taking both Nvidia's newly launched GeForce Now streaming service and the much-maligned Google Stadia to find out which one comes out on top for ease of setup, image fidelity, and game performance.
Probably some other things.
Probably some other things too.
Nvidia believes that game streaming is a billion gamer opportunity, hence why it's a little keen to get involved rather sharpish. The GeForce streaming service, though, actually predates Google Stadia by well over a year, but was only released out of beta in February 2020. There are two options for budding cloud gamers, free and founders. You'll be limited to just 1 hour sessions with the free service, after which point you'll be required to queue back up for a spot on the servers located either in North America, Western Europe, and via its partners in Russia, Japan, and Korea. But to avoid all that, there's the Founders tier, available for an introductory 12-month $5 price tag, with the first 3 months for free. This will net you priority access to extended 4-hour sessions, queue jumping, and ray-traced games courtesy of Nvidia's RTX graphics cards. No matter which tier you settle upon, Nvidia is offering a 1080p experience with the promise of high FPS.
Google Stadia is currently only available to users that purchase the Founders Edition or Premier bundles. These will set you back around $129 and come with a Chromecast Ultra and Stadia controller. Also in the box is a 3-month subscription to Stadia Pro, which nets you a selection of carefully curated games to tickle one's fancy each and every month, or whatever Google could rustle up in time to tide people over. It also promises access to 4K resolutions, sort of, sometimes. If you're not on Stadia Pro, you'll be restricted to 1080p. Google's top brass is also promising a free base tier sometime in early 2020, the exact details of which are yet to be announced, but reportedly it will be happening in the next few months. But will that come too late? Google Stadia's installation process is a doddle, except for that bit where you're forced into downloading its app and then back to your browser to play for no discernible reason. Alright, heavy sarcasm aside, the Stadia setup process is genuinely quite easy. While I don't enjoy that I have to use a needless app on my phone, that's not even supported by Stadia game streaming by the way, only to return to the browser immediately after choosing a username and queue avatar, the app is rather swift and simple to use. The browser is similarly easy to navigate, and you don't have to jump through hoops to beam your favorite games from the data center in seconds. You will have to swallow paying the store price to purchase said titles, however. Stadia is a closed ecosystem, and there's no transferring of game licenses in or out of the platform. It's like a game jail, or a console, I suppose.
Getting your hands on the GeForce Now app is straightforward enough. It's rather upfront with how you go about using it. Unlike Stadia, GeForce Now hooks into your own game library across most popular digital stores to offer a game streaming experience inclusive of your existing purchases, so no doubling down hard cash on the same games. If your most played game appears in the GeForce Now search function and requires no further steps, then hop to it. If not, it may be one of those available for single installation using Nvidia's super speedy data center broadband. The only caveat is you'll have to download these titles every time you log into the service, which is potentially every hour if you're on the free tier and have to re-queue for a spot. Crucially, not all games are supported for instant or single installation access on the service. For example, Red Dead Redemption 2 is unavailable, and that makes me a sad cowboy.
It's impossible to tweak the in-game graphics settings on Stadia, so what you see is what you get. It's possible to adjust the usual brightness and contrast settings, much like a console, but the full suite of granular fidelity sliders familiar to us PC peeps are locked away for Google and the devs' eyes only. With that in mind, textures are lacking, especially in comparison to GeForce Now, and it really doesn't compare to a local machine either. No surprises there. Look to the shadows in the scene or even a close-up of the gun model and you'll notice Stadia is lacking serious definition. But it's not just raw texture quality it's missing. Stadia also appears to be running with field of view far lower than GeForce Now, which is itself set lower than the default PC setting at 85.
Textures inevitably lose definition during motion, but generally the GeForce Now image is pretty sharp. Texture resolution and overall graphic settings are noticeably greater than those present on Stadia, and the FOV increase pays dividends to the overall experience. It only really lacks colour and vibrancy on high-res monitors that are downscaled to 1080p. On a native 1080p monitor, things look more colourful and pretty crisp. In comparison to Stadia, which has resolutely slammed the door on system settings, Nvidia has left it slightly ajar. You can choose system settings, but that can also make things act kind of weird. Metro Exodus refused to remember how I'd configured it and often wouldn't let me switch from DX11 to DX12, which is kind of rather key to that whole RTX ray tracing deal. We also found that a few famed RTX games aren't available for ray tracing despite the RTX on marketing. Control and Tomb Raider, for example, are notable by their absence. But if you're happy to leave the settings menu untouched and play as Nvidia intended, GeForce Now will optimise for high FPS 1080p performance, and it does it well on a steady connection and even on Wi-Fi.
Stadia is a competent streamer. The technology at its core is more than enough for a little light gaming when you're not in close contact with your regular rig, and it's only when it's butting up against the competition that the cracks start to show. There were a few FPS drops here or there during our time with Destiny 2, but these were few and far between. The AMD GPU pool powering Google's data centers manages to keep the game's modest graphics settings in hand. Latency took a hit on rare occasion, but was less noticeable on the wired Stadia controller. It was, however, easier to spot when using a keyboard and mouse.
The overall GeForce Now experience is convincing on the right internet connection, and potentially even across the right 5 GHz Wi-Fi too, but your mileage may vary if you're on anything less than city slicker speeds like we were. While we can't benchmark Stadia in-game, we were able to run certain in-game benchmarks with GeForce Now. Assassin's Creed Odyssey ran at 61 FPS at 1080p Ultra settings and 73 FPS on medium, which really isn't too bad. We also rarely suffered from bouts of spotty performance, thank God. I was getting worried there for a second. We often found that our attention was focused more on the gaming experience than the streaming one, and that's quite something for a cloud service. The only noticeable increase in latency was when we were actually playing over the Nvidia Shield device with a wireless controller. That combination introduced a little bit more lag than we'd necessarily want to put up with for a long time.
Ooh. Laptop gaming. There's no other way to say it. Google Stadia has some glaring issues. Its model seems to be weakened by competing streaming services, many of which existed before, so it's not like they came out of nowhere and took it by surprise, and its streamer is evidently less capable than Nvidia's. Perhaps there's a plan to scale up or utilize more powerful graphics cards down the line, but for the time being, it would seem Stadia's at a disadvantage despite its game-level optimization specifically for the platform, and it's even charging more than the competition for the Stadia Pro privilege. Maybe this will all change once Stadia launches its free tier, but for now, if you don't want to put any money down, play your own games, and enjoy the best experience, GeForce Now is the way to go.
While GeForce Now may have Stadia hook, line and sinker for the most part, that doesn't mean it's entirely off the hook itself. The promise of play all your own games sounds ace, but the real deal is a little bit more lacking than we had first envisaged. It's sold as a streamer for PC gamers with existing libraries, yet there are heaps of big titles currently waiting on the sidelines. You can forget about Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 5 and even RTX Baby Control. There's also the rather awkward relationship with the settings menu, which adds potential points of failure and contributes to a sometimes frustrating user experience. There are certainly some creases to iron out with Nvidia's GeForce Now service, but we're willing to give it a partial pass on game support and some teething issues, one with it only launching this week. As with all streaming services, it's more the holistic streaming experience than the actual bread and butter gaming that's the issue, and those are, in theory at least, easier to fix. The streamer itself is robust and it's enough to topple Stadia at 1080p. Access to some of your own games in an open ecosystem across streaming and local platforms on top of that only really sweetens the deal. If you've liked today's video, give us a like and subscribe.
Yeah. Also check out PCGamesN.com for news, reviews and features on all the latest gear and games.
Until next time.
Bye.